jumping back into this study. Let's get at it. Can we be honest? Is there any honest people in the place this morning? Right? We're in church. You should be honest. Right? If anyone's going to be honest, it should be here. Here's a question. You got to be honest. Who here likes judging other people? Anyone like judging other people? I said, let's be honest. Come on. You guys, oh, no, not me. Right? That's why I set you up. You're like, well, no, I don't like judging other people. Come on. I mean, if we're going to be honest, let's be honest. I think we do this all the time. Now, you may not think, oh, I don't do that. But let me give you some examples and see if you can find yourself in this. Come on, maybe you'll find yourself in this. How many of you know we judge how other people drive? Matthew, where are you? That's you. We judge how other people drive, right? So a few weeks ago, we were at an MNC conference in Brampton, Ontario, and Brad had rented the vehicle, and so we were tag-alongs, and I was less of a judger than Matt, I feel, but it was high-level judging, and there was a few times I was praying to God because Brad's a late stopper. I don't know, Kim, maybe you don't notice it. We were just like, stop, like that, but Matt was quite judgmental of Brad's driving. Of course, we were also talking, which doesn't help because then it's like, turn here, go there. So we all do it. I'm sure if you've driven, you've judged someone else's driving. They don't know unless you honk the horn or give them the finger. Nobody does that ever. Or the words that come out of your mouth are finger words. Right? But we do that. Maybe you didn't find yourself there. Maybe you judge other people on what they're wearing. I don't know about that. Oh, I wouldn't be caught dead in that. Oh, my goodness. That's a little too, right? Come on. That outfit makes them look up. No, we don't want to say that, right? Especially if what they're wearing doesn't follow our morality. Right? We don't judge. Remember, I said who judges, and nobody really put up their hand. We've only done 2 of these things, and you're like, oh, right? We judge people who are in competitions to get judged. I watch American Idol and The Voice. Anyone watch those? Man, I get hypercritical. But I mean, they're in it. They're actually getting judged. But I find myself, I have to say, these are amazing singers, and then I get a little picky. That wasn't quite as good, or I didn't feel that. But I'm like, who am I? They can sing 1,000 times better than I can. Oh, I don't know. I can't believe they did that. Come on. Side note, shout out to one of the best songs. If you want to hear an amazing song that wrecked me and is now my new favorite song, Jamal on American Idol sang a song called Heal. He just put the single out. Jamal Roberts, I think his last name. Tag it, go listen to it. I can listen to it every time and I move to tears and I go, man, God, it is powerful. American Idol actually this year. American Idol, do you want to sponsor us? I'm giving you a shout out here, American Idol, if you're watching. It was an amazing season of American Idol, man, but that song was, and then he did it in his finale after he won, and it's powerful, man. It preaches. So anyways, that is not why we're here, is to promote American Idol. We judge people's parenting. We judge people's posting. We judge people's churching. We judge people's friends, their homes, their decisions. Come on, how many of you are like, I can't invite anyone over because they're going to judge what my home looks like? We judge ourselves about our own homes. I remember being young and my mom would be like, they can't come over because it's a mess. And I'm like, Mom, how many times have I come home from a friend's house and told you how messy it was? Never. We're not looking at that. We're just there to play, right? But we judge everything if we're being honest. And for those who are Christians, it seems like we have that extra backing to judge because we have the morality of the Bible. Right? We've got this thing called the Word of God. So we have the morality of the Word, or at least as we interpret the Word. Because I promise you, within denominations right now, there's several that would judge differently based on the Word and how they interpret it. There's some who think their purpose in life is to judge other Christians who are getting off in their doctrine. And they will publicly do it. So, depending on how you interpret it, right, and see the Word, and as Christians, aren't we supposed to judge? I don't know. Isn't our rite of passage, you become a Christian, and then all of a sudden everyone's less than you, and you can hey, get it right, or they're, stop doing, I don't know, I'm just saying, do we think this? We have the higher ground. We have the highest ground when it comes to morality, don't we? These are questions I'm asking and judging. So we need to make sure everybody else in the world rises up to us. So let's say it together. I'm going to say it. We're going to all say it together. We love to judge. Together. Oh, that's better. Some of you still aren't convinced. Or maybe I'm just calling out what I'll say, which everyone else thinks. Because what happens is, because we get known as judgmental, right? They catch on to Christians are judgmental, and we have the backing of the word, so we can be. But then you have some denominations that go, man, we're being really mean and judgmental. So then they just flip and they don't judge anything. And anything goes, right? And because they don't want to be judgmental. But let's be honest, no matter if we think we're judgmental or not, or we do judge, I think we don't like getting judged near as much. Like, I'm okay with being like, oh, those clothes. But when someone's like, hey, you look fat in those clothes, I've had that happen, basically. Within the last year. Although someone today said I look skinnier, so thank you for that, whoever said that. You know who you are. You made me feel good today. I'm not skinnier. I just got a bigger shirt, let's be honest. But it's going to be a good service, hey? You can already tell. I'm not going to get through anything, but it's going to be a good service. But we don't like getting judged near as much as we like judging, if we're being honest. We have no problem judging others for their driving, but if somebody's judging us, it's not near as fun. And honestly, I tried to think how many people at times are judging me in their car, but I just can't hear them for my pathetic driving that I'm not aware of. It probably happens. We don't have a problem judging others for their parenting, but woe if anyone comes up and talks about our kids to us. We judge why so-and-so hasn't been at church, but when we miss church, we have a valid reason. They couldn't possibly have a valid reason. So, should we be judging? This is the question. Should we be letting ourselves be judged? Today, we're going to ask this question, to judge or not to judge, to quote Hamlet in a different way. Hamlet, is that Macbeth? Hamlet? Shakespeare? Shakespeare. It's those... Let's take a vote. No, let's not. To judge or not to judge, that is the question we're going to answer today. So we're going to jump into it and see what Jesus has to say about this. Matthew 7, 1-6. If you've been here, you know the practice. If not, we're going to read the scripture together. It's going to come up on the screen. I will start it with you, and then guess what you have to do after that? Not just read, but listen to everyone around you and see if we can get to the end together. It's an act of unity. It's a unity building thing. Technique. And so let's see if we can listen. It's pretty good. Last week was a little rough. I'm like, we're getting off. Okay, so listen. I'll start and then I'll jump in back at the end. Here we go. I want to put that up there. All right, here we go. Judge not. Let's read it together. Judge not that you not be judged. Lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. I think we're done there. Is that 6? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's begin unpacking this. I'm just going to start with the first part where it seems Matthew 7:1, it says this, judge not that you not be judged. So you're going, wow, there it is. There we have it. Thank you, Jesus. You gave us our answer. He tells us, those on the mountainside sitting there waiting to do it, do not judge. We can all go home. I answered it right there. Let's go home. That's it. Never to judge, right? We can all go home. So the question, though, obviously I'm saying that facetiously, is Jesus making a blanket statement in that to tell everyone that they can never judge? Because you'll hear people say this. We're not allowed to judge. They'll go to this verse. Jesus says, judge not, that you be not judged. And so in order to fully understand this, I think you need to look at other examples of Scripture. You got to look at more than just this to see what does Jesus say around this. And so we're going to do that today. Actually, we read it, and we're going to come back to it at the end. But Matthew 7:6, a few verses later, in the continuance of this, and we'll unpack this a little bit, he says this, do not give dogs what is holy. Any dogs in the place? All right, no, hopefully not. Do not throw your pearls before pigs. Any pigs? Again, hopefully not. But like he's saying this, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. A few statements after Jesus says, judge not, that you not be judged. Jesus gives us a verse in which we have to judge. Think about it. He goes, do not give dogs what is holy, nor throw your pearls before pigs. There's some judgment in there so you can determine what is dogs and what are pigs, so that you know how to give what is holy and your pearls before. So a few verses after Jesus says, do not judge, if he meant it to never judge, he couldn't have said this verse, because there's judgment inherent in this. There's some deciding on what you have to do based on this. You have to judge. What's this? What's a dog? What's holy? What's pearl? And so he goes like that, lest they trample or attack it. So I don't think if we look at Jesus' further words, we're kind of going, okay, maybe he didn't mean what we think. A little further in Matthew, the same chapter there in verse 15, a little bit later, he says this, beware of what? False prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruit. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? This is a very judgy thing. He first tells you to beware. What does it mean to beware? You're looking around, judging situations. Are they dangerous? Are they okay? You're making an assessment of it or judging it. And then he tells you how you judge people by their fruit. So he's not saying, you go, wow. He says, judge not that you not be judged. So he must not be making this blanket statement, because it appears in the same chapter, he's using examples that require judging. And listen, if judgment was never to happen, it would imply all actions are equally moral, or that truth is relative. I'm going to say that again. It's going to come up on the screen. If judgment was to never happen, it would mean that all actions are equally moral or truth is relative. If every action of everyone did was all the same, it didn't matter, you wouldn't need judgment, because it would all be equal. They would be equally moral, and truth would be relative, so it doesn't matter. So moral relativity means this. Maybe you've heard of it before, maybe you haven't. There is no universal or absolute set of moral principles. That's what moral relativity believes. There is no universal or absolute set of moral principles. Okay, so if that's the case, if all truth is relative, and Jesus meant do not judge. Remember, I'm saying if Jesus said do not judge, it means Jesus also means all truth is relative. And there's no moral absolutes, because there's no reason to judge ever, because it's all equal. So if truth is relative, then all actions are equally moral. Then there's no reason to judge, because it wouldn't matter. When morality is not based, watch this, on a universal truth or principle, morality becomes dependent on an individual truth or principle, which is called moral relativity. When relativity is based on individuals and not a universal, it becomes relative to what? To the person. Okay? And when morality is based on relativity or to the person, the morality then falls to me. And I coined this, I don't know, somebody else probably said it, I call it the morality of me. See, we have the morality of the Word, the morality of God, Scripture, but we have this thing in culture today that's called the morality of me. And that means what I feel, what I experience, and what I think determines right and wrong. You'll hear this a lot, and it seems good on the surface at times, but it's very problematic. So the morality of me means what I feel, experience, and think is the moral center for how I live. That works if everybody's completely moral. It fails miserably the more immorality comes in. Now, we don't live fully culture like this. We have laws and things happening, which is a morality center thing. If you get out right now and you go speeding down 20th Street in Saskatoon at 100 kilometers an hour and the police catches you, you'll know there's going to be judgment, and you'll go, hey, there's a principle here that I broke. So we do understand that, but in terms of judging others, we kind of go, oh, it's what I feel, I experience, I think. See, and then what happens is people will be like, you can't judge me. Anyone ever heard that? Christian, you can't judge. Jesus said, you can't judge me or disagree with me. It's turned into that because it's what I feel and experience and think, and you can't tell me anything about that. So if you judge me, you maybe have heard of this word before, you're gaslighting me. Anyone heard of that? Now, gaslighting is real, right? Like if you're like, I'm wearing a pink, Kathy comes up to me and says, Pastor Derek, I'm wearing a pink sweater today. And I'm like, you're not wearing a pink sweater. How silly are you? And she's like, Right? That's gaslight. Like I'm. It's not just her truth. She's stating that. But what's happened in terms of that is no one can disagree or judge someone based on something they think, because if they do, you're gaslighting them. No, maybe I just have a different truth than you do. Right? So I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying we have to be careful, because then everyone just goes, I'm so fearful to stand up for truth. And so when morality is determined by me, everyone say me. How can someone, watch this, when morality is determined by me and what I think and feel and experience, and based on what you experience, we go, okay, we'll allow that because that's how you feel. We'll allow that because that's what you experience. We'll allow that because that's what you think. And we've said okay to all that. How can you stop someone else who has their opinion? How do you stop the moral relativity? Where does it stop eventually if there's no standard? So my wife thinks something, and then I go, well, I think this. And then eventually you get lower and lower. And then you're going, where do you stop it? Because if you say okay to one person's morality, me morality, how do you say no to someone else's? If you say yes to some moral relativity, how do you say no to some others? And before you know it, and this is what's happening in society today, you get this moral hodgepodge, this moral ambiguity that we're facing today. And it comes in, mostly you'll see it when it comes to the value of life and the importance of identity. This is where morality is really when it's morality of me and what you feel, think, that's the thing that trumps everything else. You'll see it come in how life is valued, which we see it's not always valued rightly today's day and age, and in the importance of identity. What does the enemy want to come and attack in people's life, or people? Life. He wants to steal, kill, and destroy, and he wants to attack their identity, what God made them to be. Right? So unpacking all this idea of moral relativity and judgment, coming back to this idea of Jesus making a blanket statement, judge not, like you should never judge. If he did that, all of what I said would have to cease to exist, and all of this would be okay. Like just, hey, anything goes, morality of me. That can't be what Jesus is saying, because even in that chapter and other verses, there's lots of things we are told to live by. And so coming back to the question that we asked in this called Hypocrite Watch, to judge or not to judge, the first answer is to judge, yes. Jesus is not making a blanket statement saying you can never judge. So if Jesus is not saying, hey, you can't ever judge, what is Jesus telling us here? Because obviously he's saying there's something important about, hey, judge not and you won't be judged like that. And so let's unpack this and we can get a clue. Matthew 7, verse 2. That was just the intro to show you that we can judge. How many likes judging? Before you get too excited if you're a judger, you're going to want to watch this next section or pay attention to this next section, because I'm going to give you some qualifications to judging. Matthew 7:2, it says this, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. Uh-oh. So Jesus says, judge not and you will be judged. And then he goes on to say why he's saying that, because he's saying the way you pronounce judgment, guess what? That's going to happen to you. The second thing he says, with what measure you used, it will be measured to you. We're going to unpack that, but the scale that you judge others, it's going to happen back to you. Jesus is listening, and so he says, hey, this is what I'm actually dealing with. Isn't the fact that you judge. He's saying the type or way you judge is important. It's not no holds bar. You just get to judge all the time. It doesn't matter. Judge, judge, judge. And we as Christians can tend to do that. Jesus says, let me give you some parameters on what it looks like to judge properly and in a good way. The type of judgment that you have. And so if Jesus is saying, hey, this isn't just about not judging, there must be some not to ways to judge. So I'm going to give you 3 not to ways to judge today. So yes, we can judge, but here's 3 not to ways to judge, and then we'll be done. Number 1, this is not a way you can judge others. Number 1, superficial judgment. Superficial judgment. Do you know what I mean by superficial judgment? Anyone have some thoughts on that? What does superficial judgment mean? Go ahead, sir. I can't quite see you, but what do you think superficial judgment means?
What's on the outside.
Right. It's judging, he said, what's on the outside. Matthew 7:3, the beginning says this. Jesus says this, why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye? What is he talking about? Something you see on the outside. Why do you see that in the brother's eye? He's talking about superficial outward appearance. When we judge, we tend to judge from the speck that we see. Oh, I can see that. Oh, remember driving, different things. What are we seeing? We judge from the superficial, the outside, or we judge solely on what we can see. Who remembers several weeks ago, law issue versus heart issue? We judge by the law issue. This is what it is. God judges by the heart issue. And so John 7:24 says this, Jesus says this, do not judge by appearance, but judge with right judgment. Again, here's another verse. If there wasn't a right judgment, Jesus wouldn't have been able to say judge with right judgment. It implies there's a right way to judge. One of them is not to judge by just external appearance. What you see in someone's eye just on the outside. Don't base it solely on that and what you can see on the surface. Don't just base it on the speck that you see. But there is a right judgment that you can have. We see this idea of outward judgment coming to play in a story with Samuel, a prophet. He's choosing the next king of Israel. And God tells him to go to the family of Jesse and choose a king from there. And he brings the sons in front of him. The oldest comes first. And he's handsome, he's strong, he's tall. And Samuel goes, this has got to be it. And God tells him no. And he goes all the way through. And this verse comes from that, 1 Samuel 16:7. The Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance, talking about the older sons, or on the height of his stature, because I've rejected him. For the Lord, watch this, sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. The Lord looks on the heart. It's like Jesus is saying, you can judge, but it's a lot better to determine what's not just on the outward, but in order to judge, we have to be able to judge the heart. But the only way, watch this, and this is the final point with this, then I'll move on, watch. The only way you can judge the heart of a person is if you know the person. I mentioned it at the beginning. There's some people who think their calling is to judge people that they don't know at all and are very far away from. And they think it's their God-given right to do it. And it's fellow Christians. And so they're judging purely on external things. Now, I think I'd say this in a bit. I do understand, and I've shared it, what's in your heart eventually comes out. So there is some external appearance, we can do that. But Jesus says don't judge superficially. Can I help someone here? Do not read one side of a story on social media and take it as fact. Please don't. Don't even read news anymore and take it as fact. I have personally vowed that I will never make a judgment on anything I read unless I've seen both sides of the story, because that would be judging on external appearance only. And honestly, listen, can I help somebody? If I have no ability to actually get to know the heart of what's going on, I just stay out of it. I am shocked by how many people comment on things that think they should be giving a judgment about something. Shocked. When I go, you're looking at a speck, and we'll get into it, when you probably have a log in your own eye? It's crazy to me. Just stay out of that world. Stay out of that world, because the only way you can judge the heart, not just external appearance, is if you know the person. See, I'm not sure we're supposed to judge in places and spaces that we're not able to know the heart of a person. And if you think something's going on, pray that somebody that knows their heart will deal with it, because they probably will. And so here's my statement of this, then I'll go on to the second one, because this is Hypocrite Watch. Here it is. If you haven't taken time to get to know them, don't take time to get to judge them. I'm going to say that again. Take a picture of that. Write it down. When Jesus says, judge not and you not be judged, this is what he's saying. He's not saying you can't judge, but he's saying if you haven't taken time to get to know them, you don't get time to judge them. Come on. Because there's probably somebody that's gonna, whether it's within a church, whether it's eventually police, but how do you know? If not, you're doing it by external appearance. You're looking at the speck in your eye, and Jesus says that's not the way you can judge. Amen? Hypocrite watch. Someone say hypocrite watch. We're watching out for hypocrites today. Look around. Number 2, the second way not to judge. We had the first one was superficial. The second one is imposter judgment. I don't know. That was like spy music. I don't know. Imposter. Undercover. Fraud. Liar. Imposter. We don't want any imposters in here. Okay, that was a dad joke. Just on the fly there. Whew. Fake pastors. They're called imposters. Some of you got it after I had to explain it. They're, oh, yeah, you know a dad joke's really good when nobody gets it really, but it's there. It's underlying. You're like, what is he saying? Oh, man, I digress. There's one word in the English language that you can say the same word 3 times and say a whole sentence. You ready for it? Pasta, pasta, pasta. Pasta, pasta, pasta. Okay. Guys, I'm here all day. I'll be doing autographs at the back as you leave. There'll be a donation bucket for my humor. Matthew 7, 3-4. Why do you see the speck, that's what we read, that's in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own? Ouch. Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your own eye when there's a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. Look at somebody and say, you hypocrite. I'm glad that wasn't very dynamic. I was just testing. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So this is imposter judgment. This is what imposter judgment is. It's judgment that's self-righteous, unequally measured, and unforgiving. I'm going to unpack those 3 quickly. Imposter judgment is judgment that's self-righteous, unequally measured, and unforgiving. Self-righteous, unequally measured, and there we go. I'm just doing it pausing because it's about to go to another slide pretty quick, so write this one down fast. Self-righteous, unequally measured, and unforgiving. This is those who are imposters if they're judging from these 3 positions. See, because judgment should always stem from self-awareness, not self-righteousness. Judgment should always be done from self-awareness, not self-righteousness. What is self-awareness? You ready for this? Gosh, I've got a problem with my own eye. Gosh. Right? They may have a speck, but there's probably a log in this eye. It starts with self-awareness. What do I have in my own eye? I need to get this thing out of my eye first. But notice Jesus says this. He goes, why do you see the speck in your brother's eye? Watch. But do not notice the log in your own eye. He doesn't say you're not willing to remove it. He says you don't even recognize it's there. See, it's easy to see a speck in your own eye. It's a lot harder to acknowledge or want to recognize the deficiencies in your own life, the logs in your own eye. And he says you don't notice it. You don't even notice it. People who notice specks in others' eyes but don't notice the log in their own are self-righteous, not self-aware. That was some good mood music there. I felt like we should go to a commercial break because of that. Okay, now. And an ad comes up and they present something we're selling. You should become an ADHD pastor. This is what it looks like. No, that's bad. Bad to confess that, right? You can't distract me with sounds or it takes my mind there. I have notes to find my way back. Thankfully, I have them. So people who notice specks in eyes end up being, instead of logs in their own, end up being self-righteous than self-aware. But here's this. I put this. We aren't aware of what we're not aware of. Right? Like you can't be aware of what you're not noticing. We call those blind spots. I put it this way. Usually we think blind spots of something I put like you just can't see. I put it things you can't see caused by things you can see. Think of that. Blind spots, things you can't see that are caused by things you can see. If you're driving and there's a blind spot, right? Usually the blind spot happens because between your mirror and some obstruction, you can't quite see it. So you can't see the thing you can't see because of the car you're in, you can see that, but it's causing the problem. You must be willing for someone to help you from time to time tell you got something in your eye. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come up to me and they're voicing a complaint about someone else, and I think to myself, you have that except worse than they do. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm shocked at the lack of self-awareness. Now, after, you can come up to me and tell me my blind spot and where I'm not aware, because I probably do this as well, because it's a blind spot, but someone will be like, oh, I can't believe this. Maybe an example of like, oh, man, they're never at church. And I'm like, you're never at church either. But again, people judge, this is a side note, people judge themselves by intention and others by action. We judge ourselves by our intentions. I had good intentions so that you feel it's different, but I'm like, you're the same. It's a blind spot. So you must be willing to allow someone to help you with your issue if you want to have someone help someone with theirs. Come on, someone say hypocrite watch. So we're talking about self-awareness, not self-righteousness. We're going to move into the next one as we continue. Matthew 7, 4-5. We're going to look at the measure. It says this. How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your own eye when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. Look at somebody and say, okay, no, don't. It didn't work the first time. We won't try it again. First, take the log out of your own eye. Judgment, watch this, should always stem from a scale that starts with you. Judgment should always stem from a scale that starts with you. Judgment, the first one should start from self-awareness, not self-righteousness. The second thing around imposter judgment is it should start with you. If judgment doesn't start with your own eyes, you are an imposter judger. Is that clear enough? Hard-hitting enough? We are imposter judgers if it doesn't start with us. That's the idea of equally measured when he says, hey, with what measure you do it, with what you do this. First, take the speck out of your own eye. Who's heard this idea of to be an authority, you've got to be under authority? Anyone ever heard that? You could say it this, to the extent you're willing to be under authority is the extent you will be given authority. I am under authority still. Pastor Jim still will pull me into some meetings and say, I don't like what you said there. And I'll go, okay. Right? It happened about a month and a bit ago. I'm not going to tell you what it was. You guys know. You don't get to know that. But Pastor Jim was kind of like, hey, you should change it, adjust this. And it wasn't about content. It was just some of the mannerisms or some things. He goes, I don't think that helps you. I said, okay, I'll take that. I won't do it anymore. So I've stopped doing it. You probably don't even notice. Okay? But I also have, Dave McGrew I'll call. I have friends that I call when I'm dealing with a tough decision. I phone them and say, am I thinking right? And you can change my mind. If you think I'm wrong, I won't do it. Because I need to be under authority so that I can have authority. And the higher you go, the more you're going to want that because your decisions are magnified. Man, I could preach right here. See, we got people wanting to be an authority and you're going, I just want this, or I want to be on the stage, I want to be in charge. You must first learn how to be under authority because at your level, if you mess up, it's not a big deal. But at this level, and watch, if you get to be like an actor or a big name something or even big name preacher, the slightest things they do, it's everywhere. So you learn how to do it at a lesser level so when you get here, it's magnified and you want to make sure you're making right decisions. And that helps by learning how to be under authority. Someone will help you and go, you're getting off there. You better adjust there. Hey, you got something in your eye. You're like, oh, I didn't see that. So if you don't let anyone speak into your life, I'm telling you right now, in this church, if you aren't under any authority, you have no business telling people and correcting them. Stop it. I don't even think you have business giving them a prophetic word or anything. Oh, now I'm meddling. Because why? You're not under authority. And it's that gives you the right to have an authority in another life. And a prophetic word is authority. I'm just off notes now, but hopefully this is going to correct someone or help someone. But that's an authority position, and if you haven't learned to submit, you have no business doing that. So if I find out it's happening in this church, we will shut it down. Okay. It got really nervous. You guys should be thanking me for that. Because we don't need people who aren't under authority coming and messing your life up with some crazy word or some crazy thought. Thank you, Pastor Derek, for caring about me enough to help monitor that. I get enough emails that try to correct me. Don't worry. And what we do at this church. So I got all that from everywhere. But I'm saying thank you for that. That's a blessing. That's what you want. You want a safe space here. Okay. That must have been what God wanted, right? Had to, because it was nowhere in my thinking. Let's just go with that. So we don't want hypocrites, blind spots. We're talking about that. You must be willing to allow someone help you with your issues. It should start with you. The more you allow yourself to be judged, the more you put yourself in a position to judge. With the measure you judge, you will be judged. Remember that too. With the measure you judge, you will be judged. So you want to make sure you're already getting judged so you can. And with what measure you are judged, you can judge. And here's a thought. You ready for this? Remember how it talked about not seeing the beam and looking at someone's outer appearance and judging them? What about this? Here's a thought. What if the log in your eye is what's causing you to judge the situation wrongly that you're in? If there's a log in your eye, you're probably not seeing things very well. You might not know it's there, but there could be a log, and you need someone to go, get that log out of your eye. And all of a sudden, when you pull that log out, come on, you look at it and go, oh, that wasn't what I thought it was. Because most issues, come on, this is going to preach. Majority of the time, the issue you have with others and within the church is about the speck in their eye, but you're not seeing it clearly because you have a log in your own. Get the log out. I know, hey, this Pastor Eric, you're being harsh. No, Jesus was being harsh. You liked it a lot better when I started and said, we can judge, yay! I like that. Now you're like, wait, these are all the qualifications for judging? Yes. So you thought it was an open thing. This is what Jesus was unpacking. He's saying, you got to do it carefully. There's some parameters with it. You can't do it superficially or as an imposter or an impasta. Okay? So, not self-righteously. You must start with yourself first. And quickly the last one, and then we'll go to number 3, and we're done here. He says this in Matthew 7:5. You hypocrite. Come on, someone say, you hypocrite. We're on hypocrite watch today. Anyone? No? Good. Nobody in here. They're outside the door, right? Nobody made it in here who's hypocritical. Not us. First take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly. See, it's what I just said. You can't see clearly about someone else's problem when you got a log in your own. Then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. See, the best way to offer to get the speck out of someone else's eye is from a position of forgiveness, not for them to pay a penalty. See, the third one of imposter judgment is the goal is unforgiveness. I just want you to pay. I just want to go after you. I want to point out that problem. No, judgment must be always for forgiveness and restoration. That's why it's good, in hopes to help, not to hinder, not to hurt. So you need to pause. I've lost my spot. It's from a position of forgiveness and not the penalty. There's a good chance, watch, that the beam that you might have had in your eye at one point in your life, any beam that it was, there's a good chance that you had to be offered forgiveness to get out of that. We could call the beam sin. There's a chance that you had to be offered forgiveness to even get out of that allowed you to see to even judge someone else. I've had somebody say, even when we're dealing with what's going on around us and you can kind of judge and go, oh. I had somebody say to me, I was like, 1 or 2 decisions away from being that person. We don't know what we missed, or by forgiveness we walked out and we, didn't fall that way. And so we don't know what we've been forgiven us that helped us. So when you go to judge, understand it has to be forgiveness. And the only reason, you've heard me say this many ways, that you can look at someone and potentially judge them is realizing you've been forgiven from whatever you have. So judgment should always stem from a desire for forgiveness. So imposter judgment coming back. It should be one that's not self-righteous. It should be self-aware. It must start from a scale that starts with you so you're not an imposter. And another way imposter judgment is the goal isn't forgiveness. All right, third. Someone say hypocrite watch. The last one, and this one could be a little controversial, I don't know, but I think it's important. 3, uncontextual judgment. I made that word up. It's not a word. Uncontextual judgment. This is a not to way to judge. And I'm going to unpack this a bit. This might stretch to me, but this is important. And I think Jesus is saying this here, and I'll show you. See, when it comes to judgment, let me read the verse. Matthew 7:6. He says, this is a weird verse, but I believe this is what it's saying. Do not give dogs what is holy. Anybody been giving dogs what is holy lately? I mean, they're like, Jesus. Maybe in that context they do. Like, I don't know. I don't even know, but I believe this is what I'll show you what he's saying. And do not throw your pearls before pigs. Here, piggy. Lest they what? Trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. See, when it comes to judgment, watch, you need to make sure it's given in a context that it fits and will be received. You don't give dogs what are holy, and you don't give pearls to pigs. So doing that is giving judgment. I think this without considering the context. Let me help you. When it comes to moral absolutes or truth, watch this. The principles do not change, but how we judge them may. I'm going to unpack this a little bit more because I know some of you are like, what? Remember, I started with saying there's universal truths and absolutes, okay? So I'm not talking about moral relativity. The principles stay, but how we judge them may shift. Or I'm saying it this way, when it comes to judgment, content does not change, but context does. When it comes to judgment, content, the rules, the principles, the truth, the absolutes don't change, but the context does. Let's look to Jesus for an example of this. Thankfully, we got that. Because right now I know this is like, okay, is that different than moral relativity? It is. See, I grew up in a lot of black and whites, and everybody said there's no gray. I think there is gray. I think, and I'll show you this, or we live by it, we just don't acknowledge it. There is, well, let me just show you. John 8, 4-5, verse 7. There's a story you're probably familiar with if you've been in church at all. It's a lady caught in adultery. Anyone heard this story before? Yeah. Right? I've taught lots about this. She gets caught in adultery. The religious people come and bring this lady before Jesus to do something with this lady. And this is what Jesus, we're jumping in this story. They said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law, the moral absolute, the content, the rules, the principle of the law of Moses commanded us to stone such women." That's what the law said. That was the requirements by law. The content said, you must stone this woman. So they go, what do you say? And they're trying to catch Jesus between what he's bringing in his mercy and forgiveness and the law, because Jesus didn't come to get rid of the law. He came to fulfill it and all of those things. So they're trying to catch him with it. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, right? And I understand this. What was going on? If you read some others, it says Jesus got down and wrote in the sand. I don't know what he was writing, but I think he was discerning the heart of the issue. And I know he would have looked and went, okay, adultery. Now, I'm not that experienced in it, but my understanding would be to commit adultery, there should be two people involved. There's a woman here. Where's the man? Did he not get stoned? Yeah, he should have been stoned as well, according to the law. So where's the man? Something's going on here. And whether they were setting it up and just trying to get him to do a wrong answer or whatever, he discerned something beyond the content, and he looked at the context and gave a different answer than what was expected. Because the content said, you should stone them. And so he says this, let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw the stone at her. That's not what the law of Moses said. It did not say, if you find someone in adultery, only you who have never sinned could throw the first stone. That's not what the content said. But so by law, Jesus should have followed this absolute moral, but he read the situation and adjusted this. And I love it because he got to the heart of the issue. He got to the heart of the issue and said, there's something more going on here. This isn't just a lazy, somebody's trying to do something. We got to get to the heart of the issue to find out what's going on. And because he was able to, I believe he was praying, he was meditating, God gave him that answer. And so watch this, the content said to stone her, the context said to forgive her. Watch. The content, the law, the moral absolute said, you must stone this girl. But he discerned the situation. He says, but I'm going to forgive her. That's powerful. See, we wish it was always clear cut. We try to make it this, stone, adultery, stone, right? We want it to always be clear cut. We wish for that. It's a lot easier at times. When we're judging, we want it to be that truth and judgment. We want to get the formula. Give us the formula, and if it's this, it's wrong, and if it's this, and you know, certain people may lean towards that, and certain people may not, but just tell us what's right and wrong, and then we just know. It's not always that easy. I want to know who are the pigs and dogs. Okay, let's just make any pigs and dogs. If you put up your hand, then we know, and it's easier, right? Nobody's going to admit to that. So you have to determine and figure out these things. Who should get our holy? Who should get my pearls? It's not how it works. There is unchanging content, principles of right and wrong, but the context and how we apply them matters. Let me give you a few examples, then we're done. All right, content, number one, bathing suits. There's a lot of discussion on what type of bathing suits, and I'm not going to get into that specifically. But if the content idea is bathing suits, the context matters. At a swimming pool, yes. Leading worship on a stage on Sunday? No. Wait, but aren't we trying to make an absolute, like we want to and be like, hey, this is like, you'll see some religious people that they're in swimming pools fully clothed. Why? Because they've gotten mixed up between the content and the context. And they're trying to put the content in the same. Swimming suit, at a beach, great. At a fancy restaurant, you'll probably get kicked out. I added this one for free. It's not in the notes. Ready? Swimming suit. West Edmonton Mall, yes. Online, no. Why? It's not the swimming suit that's the issue. It's the context. Watch. At West Edmonton Mall, at a pool, the context fits. You put a swimming suit online and you're pulling that context into everyone's bedroom, living room, everywhere else where that context does not fit. I'm preaching today. Now, I know there's a lot, again, and I'm not judging that because I don't know hearts. Again, there's somebody, but I'm just saying, careful with that kind of stuff because you're pulling it out of context. And so in one context, it's fine. In another context, it's not. How about this next one? Content, naked. Right? Naked. Online? No. Doctor's office? Hospital? Probably. Right? My wife and I, we're not going to be naked in front of a lot of people, but guess what? When she gave birth, there was a lot of people, like... I was like, hey, okay, like you're like, man, people are checking and doing stuff. Come on, if you've ever, like I was like, what's happening here, right? If those same 5 people were in our house doing the same thing, it would be awful. See, we live like this and we don't question it, but in the context, it fit. In another context, it's terribly wrong. So we have to understand this happens, or else we're going to try to go, nobody can do this. And you're like, but they need help with the baby. No, you can't look at my wife at all. Like, but she's, you know what I'm saying? So the context switches. How about this? Sex. Oh, sex. You said sex in church, right? That's male or female, right? No, that's intimacy. Okay? Content, sex. Context, marriage, yes. One night stand, no. Right? But we try to make absolutes with certain things, but there's a context that you got to look. Murder. Anger, in anger, no. War. There's some discussions, but I'm just saying, we allow it in different contexts. Defending your family from someone, I don't know. Anger, no. Rage, no. Types of clothes, this is relevant in our household today, and it's my one. You'll hear my kids. I say context is king. Because one of my kids came and said, can I wear this today? And I said, it's not good for church. It would be okay for Costco. See, I grew up making it's God, or it's right all the time, or it's wrong all the time. No, context matters. Listen, I was doing yard work the other day in clothes that I would not wear on stage to preach. Are the clothes right or wrong? No, it's a different context. And we have to be okay with acknowledging that. We don't have to make absolutes about some stuff. That context determines the differences. I just listed a bunch that you would agree with. Okay, here's the summary of this. And I'm going to say something about Paul. I'm going long. But it's going to come up. Hopefully you catch this. Content minus context equals legalism. Content minus context equals legalism, rules and regulations. This is what the Pharisees did. It was all content. They didn't consider context. It was legalism. Context minus content is liberalism. Anything goes. This is what we're seeing today. Morality of me. This is what I feel. It's just we don't need any content. It's all context. Your context, anything goes. But content plus context equals Christism. I made that word up again. I was trying to find an ism word and I could not find one. But this is what ism means. A manner of action or behavior characteristic of someone. When we get content and context right, it equals being like Christ. And then we judge as Christ allows us to judge. not superficially, not as imposters, and not uncontextually. So if you go, Pastor Derek's all about moral relativism, I'm not. I believe in absolutes, but I believe that context matters. I believe that you can't be an imposter, and you need to know the heart, and so unless you can know the heart, you can't judge. So yes, we can judge, but here's all the qualifications I got right from reading what Jesus said. And Paul kind of, just in case you're still not convinced, Paul summarizes it this. You can leave this up on the screen there as people are writing it, Chan, just don't worry about the verse going up. 1 Corinthians 9, 20-23 says this. Paul says this. I love it. It's a beautiful picture of him understanding context. He says this, to the Jews I became as a Jew in order to win the Jews. What's he doing? Here's the context, and in order to win them, he's saying in order to do the content properly, I need to understand the context so I could reach. So I can judge, I can present. He says this, to those under the law, I become as those under the law, though not being myself under the law. He's saying, I don't follow this, but I'll be like them in the moment in hopes to reach them. Context. He's not talking about the absolute and this is the way it is, I'm the same every way and everyone has to put up with it. No, he's saying, I adjust. That I might, why? Win those under the law. When you're trying to reach people. To those outside the law, I become as one outside the law. He clarifies, not sinning and stuff. He goes, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ. Freedom, Christ has set us free. I don't have to follow all those food things and all that. But if somebody's following that, I'll follow that. Why? That I might win those outside the law. Or if somebody's not following that, I'll do that. Like I'll go back and forth. Why? Context. To the weak, I love this. I become weak. Weak in faith, I'll become like that to reach them, that I might win the weak. I've become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. He's like, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes to reach people. And I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessing. Paul discerned what the situation he was in, the context, and ministered truth, the content, according to what the situation required. You don't have to tell everyone, if you think they look ugly, that they're ugly. Right? The question this is in notes, but I'll just say this, like somebody comes up to your significant other, usually a wife to a husband, is like, do I look good in this outfit? Oh, the worst question, right? Okay? So discerning between the context and content is unpacking that, and depending on your relationship. Right? But the context, you read it and go, in this moment I need to say, it may not look the best, but because you love them in that moment and understand the context, it looks the best. And then you can maybe come back later and unpack it and say, hey, that, or maybe in the moment you can straight up say it, but you've got to read those situations. The supper, I heard the story of the one, they're cooking the supper and they thought it was their husband's favorite supper, the husband thought it was their wife's favorite supper, and they're cooking it for years, and finally after 10 years, they gathered up the courage to be like, I don't really like this. And they're like, what are you talking about? I've been doing this thinking you like it, right? And so just trying to save that. So navigating content and context will always happen in relationships. But you want to be able to determine when is the right time to say stuff, not just blasting everywhere. You're wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. And so sometimes people come up to me and be like, these people have this sin. And I say, okay. And you're like, don't you care? And I say, no, I'm looking for the context around it of how to judge it and when to judge it. All right. Bonus content at the end here, if you have the notes. I unpacked 5 or 6 things Paul says that can't be in the church. And let me give you a hint. All of them are based on how influential these sins are. So the more they're influential and people are trying to influence others, guess what? That's the quicker they get judged and dealt with. Anyways, you can read that. Bonus content is there. So this week, as we close, to judge or not to judge, that was the question. Yes, we can judge, but we need to pay attention to the way we are doing it, how we are doing it. Are we doing it superficially, imposturally, that's another crazy word, or uncontextually? I'm just making up words here, but they fit. So this week, here's your challenge. I want everyone to be on a hypocrite watch. Right? With yourself. See, you are, right? Everyone's like, right away you think that, okay. No, with yourself. to be on hypocrite watch with ourselves. Amen? That's everything. Woo! I'm so sweaty that it might be showing up. Well, I just don't want to turn around and have everyone see. I didn't pee myself if it looks really... Come on, Stan, you've been sitting for a while. Hey, you handled that like champs. That was not an easy topic, but I'm glad Jesus put that in there. So I'm just going to pray, and then Patrick's going to come and close our service with some closing reminders of what's coming up. I'll emphasize this. Put your dad jokes in, right? I want like 30, 40 of them, and then we're going to read a bunch of them on Father's Day. You know, we have to. It's a rite of passage of a Father's Day service. So I'm just going to pray. Father God, help us this week to be on hypocrite watch with ourselves, our own hearts, judging ourselves first. That if we have anything in our eyes, in our lives, that God, you help us fix it. And if we can't do it on our own because it's blind, that God will be willing to go to someone and say, what do I have? But be truthfully wanting to know to change.